Hello again, I'm Doug Smith. This is the 27 January 2017 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our guest today is Assistant Superintendent Tom Kenworthy. I'd like to welcome you back to the show, Tom.
Thank you, Doug. Always happy to be here.
Tom's been on several times, and a couple times we've discussed assessments and the PARC test and Common Core, and I thought we'd kind of revisit that since there's been sort of some state changes.
Sure.
In this regard. I guess first, though, let me ask a kind of a general question. I know it's going to be hard to answer, but when a kid graduates from Portsmouth High School, what skills can we say he or she should have to tell businesses or colleges they want this guy or girl?
Sure. So, I mean, overall, obviously, there's a lot of academic and content knowledge that you would hope a graduate of Portsmouth High School or any high school would be able to have. But I think also with that are just kind of the critical 21st century skills, if you will, of how to be critical thinkers, problem solvers, team players. Those are all of the things that we hear from businesses, particularly when we're looking to maybe send kids on internships or making sure that kids are on the right career path. It's certainly any business, whether it's right out of high school or when a student comes out of college, they want that worker to have a certain skill set and academic knowledge, but it's a lot of those soft skills that they're also looking for. That
like
we
people
try
to people stuff and things like that.
Right, and just being able to be a team player, work together, problem solve. Be a good critical thinker, and consumer of research and all of that.
But I guess the question I'm kind of getting at, I guess eventually is, that when we went to school we learned reading, writing, and arithmetic. It seems to me those are all so important, and people might argue about arithmetic only because everybody's got a device. Yeah. But how do we make sure, or how do we know? And that leads us, I guess, into assessments, that our kids can do this. I should say that on the school website, there's a Portsmouth High School Program of Studies, which I found very interesting and very well written and very informative.
Information there.
And it talks about exactly what you said. Like here's some of the things it lists. Demonstrate the ability to access and gather information through reading, listening, use of technology. Be able to critically analyze information, utilize effective problem-solving strategies. I guess they developed this in the course of, and be able to communicate effectively. And so those are still kind of the basic things, and I guess they're still really kind of important.
Right, and those are all the things that are interwoven. So we would expect, students are learning through every course that they're having. Through assessment and just various types of assessments. So again, you talk about when you talk about assessment or testing, and the kind of traditional thought there is the pencil and paper, or filling in the kind of Scantron
that's our
bubbles,
generation,
right?
Or your generation.
But yeah. Even when I was in school, certainly. But assessment it's just a lot different now, and especially as we get into preparing students for either state assessment or the SAT. Those kind of tests have even adapted into more 21st century assessments to get at those skills.
I guess that gets us into the we've talked a little bit about the skills that we want our students to have, and what we're talking about now is how do we measure those skills. And we talk about assessments. Again, we had assessments like every week when I was in school. I mean, they're called tests. And your final grade at the end of the term depended on how well you did in those tests. It was kind of a cumulative thing. So I don't think necessarily the assessments we're going to be talking about today are that much different from the ones that we had that kids still do have in the classroom. And I guess the idea that some people might have is wait a minute, all these skills they're not that relevant anymore. Kids don't know how to do math, and that's because they have a cell phone. It's got a calculator on it, and you can figure out anything. Kids don't have to know how to research. Google it,
Right, I would say the counter to that is that kids are certainly doing math at a higher level, so the way that we were taught times tables and
Yeah.
and all the basic
Yeah.
skills might look a little differently, but they're still having to apply all of that, and they do have a lot of technological assistance at their disposal that we might not have had. So the math is able to be taken to a higher level, and then same thing with research. You can certainly Google or Wikipedia something as a good first step, but then what do you do from there?
Exactly.
When you really have to get deep into a subject matter, and that those are the kind of research skills that we need to make sure kids are being taught.
Yeah, and I guess, so the basic answer to the question is, are these relevant? Absolutely, I think they are.
Right.
Because they're the bedrock
Right.
that,
Yep,
and I'm constantly, and I'm sure you have too, gone into a store and you try to give somebody a couple pennies to make it even out, and the kid can't figure it out unless their machine
right. And
lets them
we've all
do it.
we've all had that experience. And with that, I mean, I think I think we've tried to take math, let's say, to a higher level, and there's been some argument about those basic skills maybe not being there. I think we're more cognizant of that now too, and we try to make sure that those skills are still woven in.
I think I've looked at a couple of these things, and I think one of the issues for earlier generations is that we don't understand it because we haven't been taught that way of thinking.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been a shift in the way that math particularly is
when
taught.
Parents try to help their kids with homework, I say, what? How do we do that?
Right. I have school-age children myself. We experience it a little bit in my household.
Now, the other thing is we have technology in the schoolroom, in the school now. Can you talk a little bit about how technology that you have in the school maybe is changing the way that people
Sure.
both learn and are tested?
Sure. So there's a lot at a student's disposal, right, in this day and age, from just the kind of calculators that they have in the higher level math courses, which are basically like mini computers now. Every student probably from middle school grade on up in the high school has a cell phone, some sort of smartphone device. And they're used to accessing information that way. The other thing that's really pushing the way that we deliver instruction now is around trying to go one-to-one, is the concept it's called, making sure every student has access to a device within the school day that they're able to kind of have with them in every class that they have. So we've started down that road here in Portsmouth as well. Some districts kind of jumped in a little bit before us, and we've kind of more taken our time and making sure that we can do it right. Also, kind of do it in a way that can be affordable, as we continue to roll this out. So we went fully one-to-one in 6th grade this year. So all of our incoming 6th grade students this year, our current 6th graders, were given a Chromebook device, which is it's a really kind of a stripped-down laptop, right, which they're just able to get on the internet very quickly. And then we try to make sure that the instruction utilizes a lot of web-based instructional aids. So that's going to continue to roll up every year from there. That's our plan. So next year, those 6th graders are going to keep that device into 7th grade. The incoming 6th graders are going to get new devices, and we'll keep rolling it up that way. It'll eventually make its way all the way to high school. And then even in our lower grades, while we don't plan to have those students take them home necessarily, just because you try to kind of target that age where students are ready for that, it's making sure those devices are available in the classroom. So that's really transforming the way we can deliver.
So by the time they get to the 6th grade,
Right.
they'll have a good idea of how to use this stuff.
Yeah, and it just really transforms the way that you deliver. You can deliver instruction, making sure that you can hit on all of those skills that we talked about in everything that's being taught.
Now, I would imagine it puts a little strain on the teachers too. We see how fast technology changes.
Right, so that's a big focus of our professional development and the skills that we try to make sure that teachers are provided as we go along the way. And again, that's why we decided in Portsmouth, again, some districts have jumped in K-12 with a plan right from the get-go.
Yeah, you need
that's
Bill
great,
Gates
but
or something to
and you also you need to make sure everybody's ready for it. The students, the teachers, the parents. So I think the plan that we have.
Well, this makes more sense to me too. Phasing it in.
Right.
So that people gradually get used to it. How do they use these? Do they use these in the classroom as well? And how
Right.
do they do that?
Yep. So again, when in the concept where you one-to-one, that student has that device, let's say starting in the 6th grade on,
Okay.
as we continue to grow along, that's their device. They take it, it's school department purchased, and
Right.
we kind of maintain
And they're assigned for it and
authority
stuff,
over for it,
yeah.
right? And we have the checks and balances in place to make sure that they're properly taken care of. We'll help get them fixed if things break
So you
down.
got a
There's
tech support
warranty,
guy there
all
to-
that exactly,
Person.
and but they take them with them through every class. They're able to take them home. We have some filters in place to make sure they're on educationally
Okay,
appropriate.
how do they, let's
sites
say in
and
a
all
class,
that.
and I'm just asking really out of ignorance, how do they use them in the class?
So every
I know
class,
it probably varies by
right?
teacher.
It varies by subject. What's really the shift there that's also starting to happen is, and I think what we're going to see as this just becomes the norm is, students won't have traditional textbooks. And when you think about it, like their textbook or all the materials that they're going to be used are going to be online. They're going to access that through the devices, and just the different sites, whether it's in social studies and the teacher wants to take them, to a real-time map that students can manipulate.
everybody can call it up?
and everybody's on it. Those are the types of things that are taking place.
So you guys need a very robust Wi-Fi system in these
right.
schools.
So it's also that's the other part of the challenge is
Yeah.
maintaining that. And just like technology, that increases, with what you need to make sure that you can,
Yeah.
properly operate all
Geez,
of
I
this.
can see some major advantages to that. I'm thinking back to the days of biology and stuff where you had cell mitosis and
Yeah,
the guy would draw it
there's-
on a
yeah.
chalkboard.
There's
It's-
virtual labs and,
yeah, and
virtual
now you can do a video of
dissections.
showing all
Yeah.
this stuff and
Yep.
actually see it in the classroom.
Yep.
That's really great. So we got the technology. We've tried to incorporate these basic skills that we're trying to teach, and then we get to the point that we're going to talk a little about today, which
Right.
is the idea behind current assessments. And I wonder if you want to first explain kind of what assessments we use in Portsmouth and how it works.
Sure. So there's a lot of assessments that just take place at the basic classroom level, like you talked about, when we were in school, and just kind of having that,
Like tests.
test a day, right?
Yeah.
And something. So that's still happening. Assessment's still taking place at the classroom level. Whether it's the terms we use now are formative. Those are kind of like little kind of check-ins. May not be like a formal graded assignment, but teachers using that to kind of assess where student learning is, or summative assessments, which are what we would think of as the kind of tests that are carrying some weight as far
Yeah.
as what the student learned and going to eventually factor into the grade and all of that. So all that's still happening. And then we do have a state assessment that we have to make sure that we're getting students ready for in English, math, and also in science. And then when they get to the high school level, there are the assessments that people are familiar with, PSAT, SAT, that are hopefully getting them ready to figure out what it is they want to do when they graduate. and
So
leave
the
us.
state assessment would be PARC.
Right, which is now a completely computer-based assessment also. So that's, when we talk about these shifts in instruction, we also have to make sure that we're keeping up with the shifts in assessment. So PARC is completely, students take that on computer. So, let's say our 6th graders who are one-to-one in the Chromebook, they're going to take that on their Chromebook. We set it up so that they can do that. But any other students that's testing on PARC, we have to make sure that they're able to access it on the
Now,
computer.
what grades start taking PARC, or how does that work?
So right now with the state assessment system, students take PARC in grades 3 through 8 every year in English, language, art, and mathematics. And then the high school, we've seen some shifts. We were testing high school as a subject-based test, so we were testing English 9 and 10, Algebra 1 and geometry, and we were at one point making our way all the way up to Algebra 2. And now we've just seen a little bit of a shift where students will only take the PARC one time in high school. So they're going to take it every year, grades 3 through 8, and then one time in math or one time in ELA in high school. So that will kind of depend on where they come in. It's probably going to be English 9 because most students are going to kind of come in the 9th grade at that level, but possibly either Algebra 1 or geometry, depending on what level
Okay,
math
so
the students
that's
come in
once
with.
a year or once?
It's one time a year that
One time
PARC
a
is.
year.
It's broken up into multiple sessions, but it's basically once a year. It happens in the spring. We're getting ready for our rollout of PARC, kind of April and May time frame this year. So it's once a year, every year in grades 3 through 8, and then one time in high school. But then the other thing that we're laying the groundwork for now in high school is to have every student, and this is a shift, every student take the PSAT and SAT. So that used to just kind of be kind of students' choice as to whether they took those tests outside of school. And certainly if a student knew that they were on the path to do something with college after high school, they knew they had to take those tests. But we started in Portsmouth already doing the PSAT during the school day, and now that's become the state has tried to shift everybody toward that, so we were kind of a little bit ahead on that pack. But even now, starting this year, the SAT is going to be given during the school day to all juniors.
Now, are there still fees associated with those, or?
So there were, right, when it was left up,
yeah.
but not anymore. So that's been ruled into, just one of the things Governor Raimondo has ruled into her education budget as she moved forward. So yeah, the PSAT one time, and then we also pay for an additional year. So all of our 10th and 11th graders take the PSAT. The state pays for one of those years, and then the state pays for the SAT.
Okay, now if somebody's in high school and they plan to be an auto mechanic or something,
Yep.
they still need to take the
Right.
PSAT.
So and that's one of the kind of debates that you hear out there is maybe college isn't necessarily the path that all students are going to take, and that's definitely the case. In Portsmouth and in many other districts out there, probably 80-something% of our students are going to go on to a 2 or 4 year college. We know that's what the data shows us, but I think that the thinking behind this and making every student take the PSAT and SAT is that, okay, so maybe they don't decide to go on to college, but at least now they know that they have that option. They have those tests under their belts. Maybe that does, a light bulb goes off that that wouldn't have if we just left it up to those students.
Well, I think almost any trade even now requires the use of technology and a lot of things you wouldn't think of.
That's the other thing. Whether you're talking about auto mechanic, plumber, construction worker. I mean, those fields as well are so much more advanced than anything that we could have imagined. From people that we knew back in our day.
We used to have
them and
apprentice programs and things like that.
Hey.
Well, so the Park test is given, like you say, once a year. How about where do the Park questions come from?
Well, the questions are developed by there's kind of a consortium that does pull in educators, so classroom teachers, and we have sent teachers from Portsmouth who get together, fly out to a central location somewhere, and those that's where it starts. So the teachers get together and develop those questions. But Park is a multi-state consortium. We've talked about that before, and so we just have to make sure that everybody is in agreement on what the questions look like and so forth. But there's a lot of a lot of kind of research and development that goes into those questions, but they emanate from the Common Core state standards, basically. What the Park is trying to assess is how well the students are able to demonstrate what they know of the Common Core state standards in English and math at that particular grade level. So then what that should be showing then is how well have we taught those standards to students. So that's why we look at the results very carefully and do use it for decision-making purposes about the curriculum or instructional practices that we're using, because if we're seeing the results that aren't quite there in certain areas on the Park, particularly after multiple years, we know we have to adjust something, right? It's for some reason students aren't able to demonstrate that they're understanding a particular concept.
Now, I'm not sure how many states use Park, but 42 states use Common Core, plus some other organizations.
Right.
So it's widely accepted throughout the country.
Yep.
So the Common Core essentially says these are things you should know.
Yep, it's about being college and career ready. So definitely for students who are going to go on to the path to a 2 or 4 year college, but even that career ready. So even those students who aren't going to maybe go to a traditional college when they leave, but enter more of a trade or a career and tech type field, it's the same basic skills that we're saying that they're going to need to be productive in the workforce.
Yeah, I went online, did a little research myself, Google mainly, and found this website, coursestandards.org, which
Yep.
has a lot of really good information,
Mm-hmm.
some of which you just mentioned to us here, about the background and where Common Core is coming from
Mm-hmm.
and how it's used. And essentially it said, the Common Core standards established what students should learn.
Right.
It's the curriculum, though, that the individual curriculum in the individual classroom that tells them how students will learn.
Right.
So you're setting standards pretty much nationwide. There's
Yeah.
only a few states in the middle of the country
Yeah.
that don't use it. And I noticed that last year in Portsmouth, and not just Portsmouth, but Rhode Island as a
Yeah.
whole, the test scores did not indicate a real major success there. And I mean, we're talking about, generally speaking, in Portsmouth, the average was somewhere around 50% met the
Yep.
basic standards of the core.
Probably a good average. Yep.
So, how have teachers responded to these low assessments? What do you
Right.
do about that?
So we've had, I mean, it's important to understand where we're at with Park when we look at the results. So we've had 2 years of Park assessment results. The first year, I think as I came on in those, particularly a couple of years ago, that was the first year that Park was expected to be given for all of the one of the assessments for the Common Core states, and there was a lot of backlash, both nationally and in our own state against Park. That was the way for kind of the anti-Common Core feelings of people who didn't like this move towards
why are they
what they
telling us
considered a
what we need to know?
nationalized
Yeah.
curriculum or standards, right? But I think that's kind of calmed down a bit. That in that first year of assessment results, we probably, on average, weren't even, hitting, more than 60 or 70% total of our students. We made great strides in Portsmouth last year. We were very happy. We still have a little bit of work to do to kind of get us to where we want to see our participation, but we're just hoping that we continue
What
to do that.
percentage do we have of participation?
So we have to have, and the target is 95% participation. Again, we would want 100, right? Why wouldn't we want
Absolutely.
everybody to
It's a
kind
test
of
like every
help
other
us, right? Be able to kind of use these results to make important decisions. So we'd want 100. You have to have 95. I think last year on average across the district we were a little over 93%. So that was up greatly from where we were 2 years ago.
Okay.
And then you look at those results, as you said, on average maybe it's around 50%. And probably as you average all the grades, we know we should be much higher, not where we want to be. That's also looking at levels 4 and 5. So Park is scored on 4 levels, with 5 being the highest. So when they talk about percent proficient, they're looking at levels 4 and 5. We know in Portsmouth we had the largest number of students sitting outside that 4 and 5 range were in level 3. So not in levels 1 and 2, right? Which would show huge gaps in learning and work that needs to be done. So most of our students who are not in that 4 and 5 range are sitting in level 3. So we know it's just if we continue with the good work that's in place, we should be able to kind of get those results up there for where they
Okay,
should
now
be.
the 95% requirement, does that have something to do with federal funding or state funding?
It does. So that's one of the things that's definitely in language and regulation that's out there around federal funding. I mean, the federal government had said they maybe weren't going to enforce that piece, but it also has some implications at the state level. So when we rank schools,
Sure.
and the highest level that you want to try to achieve is commendable status. So we've got a few schools well on their way toward that, but we haven't quite hit that benchmark yet. But the other thing is, even if we hit that benchmark and we didn't have, you have to have 95% participation to get that commended status. So
Yeah,
that's
that kind
something
of makes sense. So it's a better
Right.
measurement. If
Yeah, and so I definitely would not want to see us in a position, and we should be within a few years ready in a couple of our schools to get toward that commendable status. And I would hate to see where the school then couldn't get that because their participation fell below the 95%.
Now, the teachers, are they able to look inside these Park tests to say what they need to change the focus on, or something? How
Yep.
do they
So
change the curriculum?
the results when they come to us, they come to us. We get the breakdown of each question, and it also shows us kind of the strand, if you will, that the question hit on. So let's say if it's math, and we know it was, something with it might have been just a question about basic calculation. It's more when we get into kind of the higher levels. Even at the lower grades, we're setting the stage for algebra and geometry concepts. So when we get the results, it tells us what strand
And
those
what areas
questions hit on.
yeah.
So we know, and we have looked at that pretty intensely. Like, we know that there are certain areas where we weren't hitting on at different grade levels. Okay, we shift the curriculum, the instructional focus. But I think the important thing for people to understand, especially in our community, is those are the types of things that we're going to do. We're going to try to take action on those results when we see them. So we want to make sure that we're having the most accurate information there.
Yeah,
And it's not because
absolutely.
the student either didn't take it or took it and didn't buy in and try their best. So
Yeah.
eventually these could possibly have major implications to what we're doing with our curriculum and instruction.
Sure. And I guess the individual teachers get involved by their own classes.
Right. We'll disseminate all that data for them, make sure it's easily accessible to them and understandable, and then we start pulling them in and having those conversations.
Okay, I know that passing the park assessment is no longer a graduation requirement in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
What are the current graduation requirements for here in Portsmouth?
So the state has removed kind of any sort of passing grade on the park. Again, there is the expectation that students take park at least one time, and then we've got the SAT, PSAT available for all students. But basically, it comes down to those courses and attaining a certain number of credits, if you will, as we translate those in Portsmouth in each area. So students need 4 years of math, English, phys ed, and health, and then a certain number of years at each of our other content areas. As their courses come together, again, the assessments in those courses should be hitting on all these skills that we talked about. And then the other big piece is there's a performance-based assessment. So there's some way, how are students pulling all those skills that they learn together and demonstrating them in a big way? So that's our senior project. So when we talk about in the spring, all seniors have to do a senior project, this culmination of work. That's the piece that is. That's where they're able to kind of put these skills on display.
Tom, we're almost out of time, but I'd like to just mention that on your website, school website, that high school booklet that they have, I think it's got a
Program
great
of studies,
explanation of all this, and also the expectations that we have, right up and including the senior project, which I don't know if that's unique, but it's certainly a great idea, because especially for anybody going to college, they're going to be doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a great showcase. We're always looking for community judges, or even if people just want to come in and observe. So that information, again, will be up there on the website as we get closer.
Yeah, I judge
to
your
the spring.
science projects. Those are fun.
Yeah, that's another great example of putting those skills on display.
Well, listen, thanks very much for coming in today, and
Thank you.
get back to us maybe after all these tests are done and we get another
All right.
assessment done.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us. Thank you. The first public workshop for the Mount Hope Park planning process is going to be held on Wednesday, 1 February, at the Town Hall of Portsmouth, starting at 6 p.m. There'll be an opportunity to talk to folks there, and also to hear a formal presentation from 7 to 9. It's open to the public. We hope that you'll come down and join us and learn about this. Thank you very much.